How exciting is this event? It's absolutely incredible. I'm honored to have the privilege to sit next to these three fine entrepreneurs who have built and continue to build tremendous companies. I'm going to let them do the majority of the talking here, and with that, I'm going to start off with Drew, and we'll come down the line. Drew, can you give us a little bit about yourself and how you guys started the operation? And I know you've got a great background in trucking. Everybody's going to love hearing about it.
I don't know about great. It exists, certainly. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you to FreightWaves for having us. Thanks, everybody, for coming and listening. So I'm Drew McElroy. I'm the founder and CEO of Transfix. We're a digital freight broker based in New York City. There's about 175 of us. We've been fortunate enough to raise about $80 million in outside capital. I'm sure you guys at this point are familiar with the themes when we talk about what we're thinking about with digital freight management or digital freight brokerage. But of course, we exist ultimately to serve customers, serve drivers, and create value, often by the elimination of waste. And so we'll obviously talk about that, and thanks for being here.
That's awesome. Thank you. Lydia?
Hi, my name is Lydia Yin, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Next Trucking. We call ourselves the first trucker-centric marketplace where we connect shippers with small trucking companies. Trucking has 5 segments: truckload, LTL, drayage, intermodal, and small parcel, and we focus on drayage and the full truckload. The company was established in October 2015. The reason why I got into the industry is really because of my family, same as Drew. My family has a few warehouses in Southern California. We're one of the largest distributors for TVs. And I did have the first-hand experience with the industry and see the inefficiencies. That's how we started Next Trucking. And we wanted to be the first trucker-centric because we built all the solutions surrounding the truck drivers' needs. And we raised a total of $125 million as of today from investors including Sequoia and Brookfield. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you very much. Brad?
Thanks, everyone, for coming. Swan Leap, we started out about 6 years ago, and we're headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin. And our goal in the industry is to completely change the definition of what a TMS is and what a TMS does. We handle all modes of transportation from parcel LTL, truckload, rail, international container, and air. And we have been fortunate enough to have earned the #1 spot on the Inc. 5000 Fast Growing Company America for 2018. So the window's closing on me using that, right? Because we didn't get it for next year, I'm sure. And then also Deloitte had announced that we were the #1 Fast Growing Company in North America. And we've done this by just listening to shippers and also partnering with a lot of our competitors to provide gaps to holes in their offering.
That's tremendous. Thank you for that overview. So with that, why don't we jump right into it, and Brad, we'll start off with you. The first question is, how did you seek out your initial funding to get off the ground?
So Swan Leap has not taken any investor funding at all. We have completely self-funded. The immediate question is, oh, so you've bootstrapped? We've built a business that makes money. I mean, we've been able to figure out how. I don't like the term bootstrap. I mean, we've built a business that allows our customers to pay for the value we bring them, and we're able to manage our business within those thresholds of revenue.
That's tremendous. That's a great story. Lydia, I know you have an interesting story as well.
So Next is not my first startup. I had another startup called 9Lux back in China, I think a few years ago, and it was a e-commerce website. I sold American brands to Chinese consumers. And it's very similar to Guild back then. And it's self-funded, and the company was profitable after 6 months thanks to my background in marketing and my family's background in logistics. I didn't have any issues or challenges when it comes to international shipping. And we generate 75% margins, and it was a happy little business until 6 months later, there were literally 100 of us. And a lot of them raise a lot of money. So lesson learned there is no matter how good your business model is, how great your executions are, it is important to have resources. And speed is the only competitive advantage. So the moment we came up with Next Trucking's idea, I immediately set out to do fundraising. And it was actually the first time I raised money from strangers. I didn't know any VCs. I literally got onto Google and searched the top 100 VCs in the United States, and I added all of them on LinkedIn. I remember only 3 of them accepted my invitation, and only 1 person replied, and the answer is no. So I actually went out to every single event in LA where I had the opportunities to meet investors and other founders. And obviously I was not that lucky until one day I saw my first investor, Eric, from Mucker Capital in Santa Monica on LinkedIn. And I saw one mutual friend. I was very excited because I normally don't have mutual friend with VCs. And then I opened that link and I didn't know that guy. But I found it pretty embarrassing to ask a stranger to introduce you to another stranger, so I did. And I say, worst the case is the guy ignores me and think I'm crazy, right? But he didn't know me, who cares? So I reached out, and luckily he actually made the intro. I met Eric and his team twice, and I got my first check, $120,000. That's the happiest check that I ever got, and that got us started.
That's tremendous. And I'm sure if you went out to market today, you'd be able to have the investors lined up out the door. I'm going to ask Drew a little bit of a different question, which I know is a little bit loaded for him.
Yeah, curveball. I like that.
He's going to take the curveball. The curveball is, when did you know you were coming out of startup phase?
That's an interesting question. I would say that we haven't, and I guess it depends on how you think about that. I'd like to think that some of the messiness associated with startups, we've actually, fortunately kind of grown past and built a fantastic team where, for the most part, we have specialists in the role, so it's not maybe quite as scrappy as it once was. But at the same time, that sort of startup ethos of doing more with less, and the best person to do something that needs to be done is you. And we collaborate, and it's all about the team winning and not individual, goals or priorities or things like that. That is still very much part of our DNA and our culture. And I think the day it's not is the day we're doing something wrong. It's amazing. Obviously, most of our customers are very large enterprises, and it just so happens that I've never worked at a large enterprise. And so from the or a very large enterprise, I should say. But from the outside, it's amazing. Sometimes the slowness that you see in these companies. And Lydia said it before, speed is everything. And so we focus on going very, very fast. Like I say, the day that changes is the day that things aren't going the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a phenomenal response. Brad, do you have a response for that? When do you know you're coming out of startup phase?
Yeah, I would define startup as broken processes in your company. And I think it was, in the last 18 months, we've been able to fix and establish best practices in all of customer-facing interactions. So that was the first step. And we've pretty much nailed down all of our internal processes, behind the scenes. I mean, a surprise for me was getting a $1,000 dinner expense because we didn't have a travel policy in place, is an example I like to use. And we're so committed to process definition so we can continue to scale, that we're actually going through ISO certification right now, which is certainly not fun, but we're learning new things about ourselves every day.
That's tremendous. Lydia, when did you know you were coming out of startup phase, or are you still within it?
I don't think, same as Drew, I don't think we got out of the startup phases, but we did have different phases of startups. From the very beginning, people working in my house, and my mom cooked breakfast and lunch and sometimes even dinner for the team. Then to a small shared office, not like a WeWork kind of shared office, like a crappy office. And we were working on the folding tables. I sometimes even on a lap because we don't have furniture. And then till we moved to the current office, we're in Linwood, and I remember most of the people in LA don't even know where Linwood is. We're really north of Compton. So our dream was really to build the second Dr. Dre straight out of Compton.
Linwood sounds much more marketable than Northern Compton.
Yeah, and we're in the process of moving to El Segundo, a beautiful new office. So now we'll be having 4 offices in Southern California and one in China, and over 150 people worldwide. So it's very exciting journeys for us. So I think startups is more like a spirit for us. it really encourages innovations and allows mistakes and pushes through the limits and it makes impossible possible. So that's the kind of spirit that we wanted to keep. No matter how big we grow into, we want it always to be a startup.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And it sounds like we know your company's theme song is going to come from a particular artist out of Compton.
Parental advisory.
2001. You know, you guys talked, you specifically brought up culture, and within your guys' responses, you talked around culture a little bit. I'd like to build on that. How do you think about building a corporate culture? How do you build it? How does it evolve? How does it change through different stages? How do you think about that?
Sure. So we, you know, it's interesting. As we've spent a lot of time, as you can imagine, thinking about culture. And I think it's frankly important in any business. But what I think is particularly unique about at least where we specifically sit, and probably some of the other folks in here as well, we really view ourselves as the intersection of a logistics company and as a pure technology, you know, engineering, building software driven company. And the reality is those two, how do I say it, personality types, or the experiences that one has had in life leading to either be, you know, say a software engineer or a data scientist, vis-a-vis, you know, a hardcore logistics glass eater, those are pretty different backgrounds. And to get the best out of us, frankly, is to take the good from everybody and to ideally jettison the bad. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've said this before, but I feel like you haven't lived until you've seen, you know, an MIT data scientist and an ex-JB Hunt dispatcher from Fayetteville red in the face arguing about the best way to match truck and load. And it's all right, we think we're doing something pretty cool here. Because part of it is you foster that spirit of getting to the right answer is key. But at the same time, there's no need to be an asshole about it. And we always talk about you take what you do, but not yourself seriously. And those two guys or girls or whomever who are arguing and passionately fighting about it, 45 minutes later are at happy hour hugging and doing all sorts of, you know, ridiculous things, hugging appropriately, by the way. But that's
it's a good caveat.
That's what we've built. And I think to be either a logistics company that's trying to play tech, or a tech company that's trying to, you know, we'll hire some of those logistics people, I don't think that's ever gonna work. And so we've been very fortunate from our founding. There's me, and there's my co-founder, who's the opposite human of me. He's an engineer in his DNA, so we have very disparate skills, and we've brought that together. But at the same time, I'd like to think, at least for the most part, we're not jerks. And we embody that in everything we do.
Yeah, that's a tremendous response. Brad, do you have any thoughts on corporate culture, building it, and how it evolves over time?
Yeah, obviously it's difficult for any leader in any organization today to constantly be revisiting your culture. For us, what we found to be successful is a culture of self-responsibility, because then a lot of the other issues start to go away, like, hey, why did you leave at 4 o'clock? Or don't you want to be here? Don't you want to work here? If we all have self-responsibility and we don't have to micromanage, we can just hold people accountable to objectives. And that's something that as our company has grown, we've seen people that have actually even shifted their own sense of self-responsibility, both for the better and for the worse. And that is I think it is part of a living, breathing, and advancing culture when you can actually be changing and progressing. So.
Yeah, that's so critical, especially at the early stages. Lydia, how have you thought about building a corporate culture, or company culture, not a corporate culture, and you know, especially knowing your family's history in transportation? How have you seen that evolve through time, knowing that you continue to build on that?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really focus on culture until recently. At the very beginning, we were chasing revenue, building products, and we were working so many hours. As a founder, I was working 18 hours a day, deprived of sleep, lack of resources, lack of money. And I honestly didn't have time to think about cultures and benefit. And,
culture, I'll give you your culture. Go build the product.
Yeah, team building. So I think the company culture shifted a little bit when we hit about 60 to 70 people, close to 100. And it became extremely important because it allows us to bring in talents, retain talents, share the vision, because you have more people. You cannot share the vision in a room anymore. What we did is we actually formed a culture committee last year. It's a group of people from different departments, not necessarily executives, who are interested and passionate about shaping the company cultures. So this group actually determined our current, because it's actually evolves. So our current mission, vision, and values were determined by this group. And of course, it continues to evolve. Like our current vision is really to make the freight painless, because we acknowledge that, freight industry is a painful industry. There's a lot of room for improvement. And our mission is really to empower the drivers to work the way they want, when they want. That's why we consider ourselves the first trucker-centric marketplace.
Yeah, that's a tremendous answer. Thank you for that. Drew, what do you see as the biggest enablers for building and sustaining a high-growth company?
I'm sorry?
What do you see as the biggest enablers for building and sustaining a high-growth company, whether it's recruiting, whether it's technology, whether it's...
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's probably all of the above, right? I mean, the way I look at it, you as an individual, to be a founder, you have to be wired properly, or it's never going to work. And by wired properly, I mean to be a founder. For the rest of life, you might come across as a little bit odd, right? Because 18-hour days and all of the things that go along with that, the relentlessness that is required to get going requires a certain sort of dedication that if you don't have, or if you aren't interested in, you're just never going to make it. So I certainly think that you need the right mindset amongst the founders, and without that, you're never going to get anywhere. But beyond that, there's a lot of other must-haves, right? I mean, if you don't have, frankly, a good idea in a very large space, that's going to, again, make things pretty darn tricky, at least if you're looking to build a venture scale business. You can certainly build nice, cash flow positive businesses without those sorts of things. But if you want to build, a truly high growth, exceptional company, I think you're going to have that. And then, of course, you mentioned it, a company is really just a collection of people. I mean, of course, there's people who build product as well, but at least we are in the service business. And so if we don't have the right people on our team, we're in big trouble. And so, honestly, it's evolved to this point, right? I'm sitting here and I'm happy to be here, but I'm not dealing with drivers who are having an issue or helping customers. I'm here. And the only reason I can do that is because we've built an unbelievable team. And so now my job is to come out and scream from the mountaintops about how wonderful we are so that we continue to do what we need to do. But if you don't have the right idea, if you don't have the right dedication to that idea, and you don't build and inspire the proper team around it, I don't think you're getting out of the gate.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree that having the right idea and having the right people is paramount. So maybe
talent is everything.
Maybe to pose the question a little bit differently to you guys, Lydia, knowing your background in the warehousing space, how did you come up with the idea to start Next Trucking? What was the thought process? What was the thesis? What was the sort of aha moment that got you to say, I need to go do this right now?
Well, I was never interested in logistics. I'm a girl who is interested in fashions, all the fancy stuff. So after graduating from USC, I actually worked at PR and the marketing agencies. It was fun, right? It's fancy. My family has been in logistics for a decade, and we operate a few warehouses in Southern California. So it's like big boys game. That's why I was never so interested in the industry. And also there was no technology, so it wasn't that sexy at all. Until one day, I actually went to my family office. I saw one dispatcher was arguing with the driver for 2 hours, trying to covering one load. A lot of back and forth negotiations. He actually picked up the phone and called multiple drivers trying to find the cheapest one. And then when he found the cheapest one, he's trying to find another cheaper one. So he picked up the phone and continued to make the phone calls. And then he came back to the original one, and that driver dropped the load. Then he did it all over again, the spiel. So I was like, wow, this is ridiculous. This is super inefficient. And another example I had is, I had one driver came to the warehouse asking for one load. It's one driver from a top 5 trucking company in the nation, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. And he came in with a piece of paper with numbers on it, like handwriting numbers. So, and our warehouse spent 3 hours trying to locate that container, and we couldn't find it.
It didn't exist. It was a typo.
Yeah, because it was a typo.
Yep.
So it was like, wow, this is a multi-billion-dollar trucking company, and it wasted us 3 hours trying to locate a load. I was like, this is ridiculous. We have to do something about it. So that's why we set out to really talk to the drivers. After talking to tons of drivers, we came up with this marketplace idea. And I remember we had drivers come over to us and wanted to take picture with us. It was like, this, if you can make this a reality, you're our hero, let's take a picture. So that's how we got started. And obviously the first prototype didn't work, and then we evolved and changed the models a little bit, and built more technologies into it. And now it's, for truckload, we're very much automated, and we're working on automating drayage, which is even more complicated than truckload, because it involves, the terminals, the steamship lines, the yard, and the carriers and shippers. Everybody was working silo. There's no connections, no data visibilities throughout the whole supply chain. So there's bigger problems that we're solving right now.
Yeah, that's a tremendous answer. Thank you for that. It's incredibly impressive. With that, I'm going to ask you a little bit different question, something I know you're pretty passionate about, and I'd like to spend the remainder of the panel thinking about more forward-looking topics in the space, which I'm sure you guys all have. I know you guys all have strong thoughts on. And so, with that, Brad, where do you see the industry? Where do you see the industry heading, and how does the implementation of technology continue to influence the space, in your view?
So, April 28th, 2019 was the day the music died. Our industry changed forever. We all knew Amazon was going to get in the freight business, right? Because they filed an MC number like, what, a year, 18 months ago, whatever, or 24 months ago. But I haven't met the person that knew that they were going to get into the capacity business for shippers to use Amazon's capacity. And if you start to think about where we're at, as an industry and the role that a 3PL plays, the role that carriers play, it has so many similarities to financial advisors in the 1990s right now. The days of stockbrokers making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a trade existed. The birth of the internet changed that. We're still in a transactional place in the supply chain and in the 3PL space. We're not in the 3PL space, but I mean as an industry, where transactionally you can make anything you want on a load. It's not clear to the customer. And I think that changed on April 28th when I read the FreightWaves announcement that Amazon is going to offer capacity at 30% below market. Now, this creates a tremendous opportunity, probably the biggest opportunity that any of us will have in our careers right now. We have the opportunity as a 3PL, if you're a 3PL, to run out and redefine your value proposition. It's an absolute land grab today of what you're going to do to better offer solutions to your customers. The days of spot transactional freight are done. But what companies need out there, and I think we all agree, Drew even said it, that shippers are so slow to change. But 3PLs have an expertise in helping to redefine supply chain process, identify risks to businesses, and do a better job of supply chain engineering. Now, to imagine a time in technology when we can integrate in one day a technology into your customer to shore up all their business process and visibility through technology and give that as the value prop. Companies will pay more than the hidden margins on transactional freight if you could solve that for them. But a lot of the attitude into this announcement is we're going to wait and see. There's an opportunity for the folks out there to gain market share, and the ones that are waiting and see are not going to seize the moment that exists right now. I don't believe Amazon will be in the supply chain engineering space or the connectivity space because it's not complementary to their business. They like the idea of the capacity being complementary to their business. It alienates a lot of risk for them. And also allows them to run more efficiently when they can have all your capacity as well. But supply chain engineering is the new 3PL service, and we see transactional freight completely going away, which is, for those of you that are progressive enough to be here at this conference, should be a really, really exciting time.
Thank you for that. Drew, I know you've been in the space for a while and you have strong thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think, we started talking to VCs like late 2013 and early 14. And I remember distinctly one meeting where I got a couple of minutes into it and the investor kind of stopped and was like, wait a minute, is this a trucking business? And I was like, well, it's a logistics marketplace. And he's like, no, clean tech, get out. And I was like, so, as you can imagine, right, today, we've been talking about this whole conference, there's a tremendous amount of capital available and interested in this space and frankly doing good work from a variety of different vectors, which I think is fantastic and fascinating and certainly the most, I didn't answer the question, but part of the reason I had to start Transfix was because I was so tired of hearing people say, that's the way we've always done it. And that's like nails on a chalkboard to me. And clearly that's largely been put to the side now, and there's certainly a tremendous amount of momentum. My personal view on how I think I'll call it the truckload space is going to continue to evolve. I would suggest that platforms like ours, not our whole, but a big part of our value creation is based on utilization, right? We all know that something like 30% of a driver's time is lost. There's no revenue creation in that time. And if you can do more with less, if you can monetize those assets through all the things we talk about, data and ML and AI and all that good stuff, if you can fundamentally put more loaded miles to a truck, you're creating a win-win solution for everybody. And though we do not yet have the scale of some of the very, very large brokers, we're obviously working our way to get there, even still at what I would call subscale, we're already seeing outsized returns. And so the way we look at it is our job is to continue to add scale. And frankly, unlike some of the what I would call the larger traditional companies that in some ways have diseconomies of scale, right? That's why you have multiple branch offices, because you can't do it all out of one place, either because of the people or the tech stack you use or whatever it might be. And so if we are able to continue to grow the way we are and actually harness the scale, which we're seeing, again, work at subscale, then there's no ending to that. And I think what's going to ultimately happen, the kind of the natural outcome of that is there's probably only a few players when it's said and done, because those companies just continue to ultimately eat the world. And I doubt it's a true winner take all, just because shippers are, not, and rightfully so, probably not really gonna put their eggs all in one basket, probably. But I other than really niche-y things, I see, 5 to 7, 8 companies like truly surviving this. I think that's the way it has to go. Because if we keep generating increased results, why would we stop?
Yeah, eventually the winners will emerge. Lydia, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with both of them. I think with the influx of the capital and the influx of all the new startups in the logistics space, the industry is actually ripe for disruption. Because 10 years ago, I was trying to raise money for my family's warehousing business, and it was almost impossible because it's not sexy enough. Because 10 years ago, shippers have very thick margins, and usually it's between 50 to even 300. So logistics cost is a fraction of their margin. But until recently, e-commerce is mature and the trading became so transparent, and logistics cost accounts for 10% of average vendor's margin. So everybody is seeking for an opportunity to reduce the cost and looking for a solution to make the logistics supply chain more efficient. So that's why everyone all of a sudden look into this industry, then realize that logistics is a $1 trillion industry, trucking is an $800 billion industry, and it's underdeveloped. There's no technology. Most of the softwares were built in the 90s. So I think we are doing the right thing at the right time. This is the golden opportunities for companies and new entrants like us. And we're lucky that we're able to attract the top talents from both tech and the industry. And I know everyone's working on different segments. It's such a large industry. And we're very proud to be a part of this journey. and we're determined to be the driving force behind the drayage solution.
Yeah, that's tremendous. You heard it firsthand. Dynamic space, rapidly growing, and it's a land grab for everyone. It should be very exciting. Thank you all for your time.